Welcome to Powr Ballads. I'm delighted to have with me a longtime friend, Porter Novelli alumni, and just overall rock star, Rosy McGillan. Rosy, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm excited to, as I was thinking about this interview, I was thinking about as long as we've known each other and the many, years that we worked together, there's so many still questions I have, about just sort of your background and how you got into the field. And so I'm just excited to uncover some of that with you today. But welcome.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm very excited for the conversation.
So, so let's just start with you are now at the American Red Cross.
Yep.
If you would tell me a little bit about your role there. And then we'll go sort of in reverse, and then talk about sort of what's led
back up to
led
birth.
To that. All the way.
Yes. So in fact, I've just hit my 3-year mark at the American Red Cross. So I'm the Chief Marketing and Communications Officer, and I took this job. I was one of those, I would say, interesting people in that middle of COVID, I decide at 50 years old, let me change careers or change employment, I should say. So I just decided to take the risk. We were in the middle of COVID, and I had started my career in nonprofit and always knew I would end up back there. But here we were in a consultancy world, and I was consulting clients on how to have a positive impact in the world, how to make change. And we're in the middle of the pandemic, and I felt like I'm just too many steps removed from that. So I was sort of spinning around in the back of my head, where do I want to go? And I kid you not, Melissa, it was one of those things where I think people always talk about it, but job opportunity came across my desk, and they were changing the position at the Red Cross. There had been a public affairs function and a marketing function. Both of those leads were retiring, and the CEO, who had a marketing background, said, let's bring them together. It was a tremendous opportunity. I interviewed for the job over many, many months, and I had maybe 4 organizations in the nonprofit space I would consider going to. Red Cross was at the top of the list, and stars aligned. So here I am.
Amazing. And they are so lucky to have you.
Thank you. Thank you.
What have been some of the highlights of your time over the past few years?
I would say the highlights really start with the leadership team, and that's the primary reason I took the job. I think we all get exposed to different styles of leadership, and the way we talk about it at the Red Cross is Gail's table. Gail's our CEO, and she brought together a really interesting mix of backgrounds over the years, and just being exposed to the different thinking has just been transformative for my career. I would say that's a big highlight. But the other highlight is going out into the field and seeing what our organization does. We've got 300,000 plus employees, 90% of them are volunteers, which, shocker, right? 90% are volunteers. And you go around and you get exposed to, you do a lot of volunteerism. You're getting exposed to people who, at a moment's notice, will pick up everything and they will deploy to Maui. They will deploy to Guam. And just being exposed to that kind of selflessness every single day has just been transformative for me. And the people we serve, they come into a shelter, and actually I'll give you this quick example. So I went to my first disaster. It was Hurricane Ida, and we were in New Jersey, and I walked into a shelter, and I'm wearing a Red Cross shirt. Literally the first time I'd ever walked into a shelter. I think I'd been at the job a year. And this family just came up to me. This little boy hugged me around the leg, and he's like, let me bring you over to where their cots are sort of set up, and they've created their family unit. And the trust in the brand and the appreciation for what little we can do is just, it's expected, but then it's truly rewarding when you see it.
Yeah. And humbling, I imagine.
Very humbling. Very humbling.
Wow.
That's the right word. Yeah.
I just thinking about all of the people that come together, not paid, just from their heart. That's the kind of thing that gives me hope in humanity, despite all the just craziness in the world.
Yeah.
being able to witness that
Yeah.
and be
Yeah.
part of that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a really good, that's a really good way to put it. There is, it's a tough place to work, because anything bad that's going on in the world, essentially we're affiliated with it in some way in trying to help. But at the end of the day, you have made a difference somewhere, and it does give you a lot of hope, and there's a lot of optimism. So it's good.
I love what you were saying earlier too about this being an opportunity to get back like closer to the front line. And
Mm-hmm.
what strikes me in hearing you describe your role too is you get to deploy or employ all of that consultancy knowledge and experience because, as you're helping to shape strategy and communications and equipping people right across the organization, but you're also able then to step into like, I'm here on the ground, or connecting directly with the people who are providing services. So being able to kind of tap both sides of that. And I really relate to that because I feel like in the past year or so, that's been what's so energizing for me as well.
Yeah.
I love I do love the strategy work and I love being able to kind of think and kind of, see sort of the bigger picture. But I keep getting drawn back to when you want to think about how you can make an impact and things are so big and
Yeah.
complicated and right, really the way you see it is in that one-on-one interaction.
Yeah.
And you have to have kind of that belief that those one-on-one interactions multiplied, over time is what makes the change and what makes the
Yeah.
difference.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's really spot on. I'm part of the national headquarters staff, right? So I'm not doing near the work that the field communicators, for instance, in my job are doing. But the fact that I get to see it and I get to be part of the decision making as as part of the organization to figure out how we do help deliver our mission as effectively as possible, it brings you two things. One, it does bring you that sense of impact because every single day, even if I'm not on the ground, I am in some way influencing decisions about what's happening on the ground is number one. So you do feel that impact. The other thing that comes with that, though, is tremendous responsibility. I was just talking about this with one of our councils the other day, where when I look at the brand, I picture in my head the Red Cross emblem. And my job is all of our jobs, not just mine, but it's to wrap that around with a blanket and make sure that it's always protected so that people trust it and people know that no matter what's happening, whether it's a home fire, which is the majority of our disasters, whether it is deciding to give blood, take a CPR class, whatever it is, that they see that emblem and they think, okay, I can trust you in my community and you're going to help fix whatever this problem is. So that responsibility is I would never say it's a burden, but it is something that weighs on you every single day.
Yeah.
So it's a pro and it's a challenge, I guess is the way I would put it.
Yeah. But that's what gives it meaning, right?
Absolutely.
Without that kind of weighty responsibility, it's a job or it's a hobby or it's, and
yeah.
That trust, you're so right, because the only way for the American Red Cross to really be impactful is to have that trust, right?
100%.
Communities have to let the organization in. People have to let, right, the organization in. And if you don't have that trust, then that sort of fundamental first step is broken.
Yeah. And, we were just, again, having a conversation about this with the same council earlier this week. When you look at the traditional marketing funnel, if I think about that side of my job, we've got the awareness down. We've been around 143 years. So we're very fortunate in that regard. So we've got the awareness piece of it. Then we've got to get to the relevance. Why, do you, Missy Taylor, think about the Red Cross and why is it relevant to you, right? So we've got to make that connection. then we've got to get that trust. Once we have that, then we can have the relationship that makes the Red Cross community what it is. But we can never rely just on the awareness piece of it, because without the trust and the relevance, we just can't have the larger engagement, larger connection as marketing communicators.
Okay, so that last statement just connects for me the work that you and I did together at Porter Novelli in the area of social marketing, which, just as an aside for any listeners who aren't familiar, we are not talking about social media because social marketing was really birthed in the early 70s. There was no social media.
Right. Yep.
But all that stuff about the marketing funnel, understanding, the marketing mix in our audiences, when you can take that and apply it to health and social causes, like making the world better. That's what social marketing is. And so, one of the things I've always loved about that field and sort of a mantra is that awareness may be needed, but it's never sufficient in actually getting any kind of behavior change, any kind of impact. So it's helpful that people know who the Red Cross is and what it's about, but that just kind of, left to its own devices is not enough.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry. Now I will step
No.
off
I agree. I'm nodding energetically.
So if you would let's rewind to the previous chapter before you headed to the Red Cross. Talk a little bit about what brought you to Porter Novelli, and then we can reminisce a little bit about some of the work that we intersected on.
Yes, but give me 1 minute because I am going to have a coughing attack.
Okay. Right.
Sorry, I did get my COVID shot because I am aware and it's relevant to me, but I do have a cold. So Porter Novelli, life-changing move for me. I was at that organization for more than 15 years. And the reason that I went to Porter Novelli was exactly what you just talked about in terms of the niche social marketing piece of this. I was brought up in nonprofit. I started to go in the consultancy space to pay the bills, not going to lie. But what always drew me to it was the connection between, or I should say, applying my communications and my marketing skills to positive causes, always the case. And Porter Novelli just had that niche, had that specialty. And I came to the firm to work specifically on Alzheimer's, on aging issues at a time when it was not talked about quite as much as it's being talked about today. And I got in there and I got to work with people like you, and we got into really meaty accounts and smart people. And it positioned me for really any job I think I would want going out of the organization. Just really, really fantastic experience for me.
Yeah, I share that. The opportunity we had to work with such great people, and just learning as you're doing, just constantly being stretched and growing. And then when you mentioned, the Alzheimer's work, and I've often thought about 20 years ago, or gosh, longer now, but about 20 years ago, working on the initial autism awareness campaign at CDC. You think about, you're in the middle of just trying to get the work and do your best and, make that difference. And you look back and it's it's a completely different conversation. We were part of those early days. It's, again, another sort of humbling moment to have been part of such important work.
Yeah, and it's interesting as I go back to the conversation I had earlier about the decisions that we make at the Red Cross. When I first got into the job, I'll be honest, I was sort of taken aback, and it was a time of COVID where we were having to make a lot of big decisions. And I remember, sort of saying to myself, hold the phone. I'm weighing in on decisions that are going to impact millions and millions of people. And I, had a little bit of imposter syndrome. But then when I looked back on it, I thought, we were in the weeds, but we were doing that every single day, whether it's tobacco control, whether it's immunization decision, whatever it was, we were having those conversations and we were driving that discussion. But you don't always think about the impact you're having when you're in the nitty gritty every day.
So true. So true.
Yeah.
And you know what I loved about our team and just the culture and environment there is we took the issues very seriously, but we did not take ourselves too seriously. And what I love, and so yeah, so we had fun and we, but also our ego, like we set our egos aside, so it wasn't this like, yeah, I am part of these, important decisions, but we just, and the word I always use, and I personally kind of love it, is just we were earnest. We earnestly cared about the issue, the cause, the organization we were representing, and just doing a great job. And I think that alignment of values was what made even, the hard days, it made them rewarding.
Yeah. And I would throw in there humor. Sense of humor was key. And always is. I hire for humor. I work well with people who have sense of humor. You have to have it, or you'll go.
Now, I would know nothing about that, Rosy.
No, right?
You and I have never shared a laugh.
Yep. I think you hire for kindness, you hire for brains, and you hire for humor.
I love it. It's a powerful combination.
Yeah.
Powerful combination.
Yep.
So, so prior to that, we won't go all the way to birth, although that would be fun and fascinating too. But what was it that kind of prompted you to go into nonprofit? And was it also kind of, did you always have the communications kind of lens or angle to that as well? Or kind of, how did that come about?
It's going to sound a little bit cliche, but 100% my mother. So I always knew I would be in writing is what I started in. I always thought actually that I would be a sports journalist, but that went a little bit awry. But I always knew I'd be writing. I was a big reader, always had sort of a gift for writing. That was what started. I had teachers who recognized that when I was younger, so I sort of glommed onto it. But my mother was a nurse, and she was a nurse in rehab for people who had experienced traumatic brain injuries. And when I was younger, she would force us to go and see her at work, and she would have us walk around the unit, and it was very unsettling. And I was 15 years old, and I'm having to see people who are recovering from stroke and all this kind of stuff. But that was one piece of it. And then others, she was, we grew up Catholic, and she was very involved in the church. And, we would be out there at Thanksgiving delivering food, the Samaritan Kitchen and things like that. So it was always sort of core to everything that we were exposed to. And then you add to that, in college, I majored in political science. So the idea of issues and community, it was all sort of coming together. And so my first nonprofit job was in brain injury. It was for the national, at the time they were called the National Head Injury Foundation, which is an aside, is where I met my wife. But,
wonderful.
I immediately saw, okay, I'm a communications manager in a nonprofit for what I would consider a health and a social issue. And it was just essential for me to keep doing that in some way. So I went from there to an injury prevention nonprofit, National Safe Kids campaign. And the head of that, it was founded by C. Everett Koop, our former Surgeon General, and a guy named Marty Eichelberger, who was head of emergency medicine at Children's National Medical Center. He was also head of the burn unit. So I think my mother was somehow communicating to him, because part of your orientation was you had to go tour the burn unit at Children's National Medical Center. And I was like, dear God. But again, I was able to write speeches. I was able to develop communications materials focused on injury prevention around everything from burns to child passenger safety, whatever it was. The thing that I will say that job exposed me to was all of those different programs were sponsored by big corporations, Johnson & Johnson around poison control, FedEx around pedestrian safety, General Motors around child passenger safety. So I started to understand this idea of CSR or corporate social responsibility. We call it a lot of different things now, cause marketing, and I loved it. I loved this and sort of got me exposed to, okay, hold on, I can actually go work at a place that's a little bit differently funded than a nonprofit. Had some grad school loans I had to pay off, and that opened me up to some really interesting things where, for instance, you would have a pharmaceutical company funding a nonprofit on an awareness campaign around heart disease. Instead of starting to see that trifecta was just a whole set of skills that I hadn't had before. And go forward to Porter Novelli, which a lot of our work was in that space. And it just was a path I would never have been exposed to without that one particular National Safe Kids campaign job. So, yeah.
That is so cool. I love that intersection too of being able to find, I think, the common interests, if you will, across, right, these different organizations and interests, recognizing they have ultimately different, I don't know, structures and, and they have different motives and things, but there is a way to align them. And if you can, I think it takes an expansive mindset, meaning like you can't just be binary of, private sector bad, public sector good, you have to be willing to kind of delve into the gray a little and figure out what can make it work.
Yeah. And I think we both got exposed to that so much from Bill Novelli. And, he, as a founder of Porter Novelli, he came from the private sector. He came from the marketing and the advertising industry, and he applied it to behavior change, applied it to meaty social issues. And I think his triple bottom line focus, where we have to be able to make the impact financially, as well as socially, also helped to transform the industry. And when I look at the American Red Cross, the majority of our leadership team has the mix, right? They have the corporate sector, they have the nonprofit sector. Many of them also have the government sector, because you do need all of those shared learnings. I think the nonprofit space, incredibly important, incredibly commendable. I do think if you're just solely focused on that piece of it, that you may be limited sometimes in that perception of corporate is bad and nonprofit is earnest, to use your word, and good. But there's room for all of us. And when you can get that mix of all of it, government included, I feel like you have a lot more impact.
Absolutely. Yeah. And certainly a lot more potential for impact.
Right.
Being able to draw on all of those things.
Yeah.
Speaking of potential, so with all of these different experiences and kind of as you've navigated and the beauty of having a few years of experience behind us.
Right. I mean, my 30th birthday is coming right around the corner. So
we won't ask what number of 30th birthday that is, but that's okay.
Exactly.
I'm going to tell you though, being post 50, I'm proudly 53, feels so good. Now, I think part of it, just as a quick aside, is I don't always feel 53. Some days I do. Some days trying to get out of bed is,
right.
But there is something super freeing about being in my 5th decade, of just like, I am who I am. And if it hasn't really changed in 50 years, then it's probably not. So let's embrace, what it is.
Yeah.
So that's all a long lead into, over the years and over your experience, you've been able to discover, uncover, maybe more clearly articulate what your superpower is. And while I know it's not always comfortable to say, oh, I have a superpower, but I mean, deep in that's what propels us forward and is able to drive us each day. So I'm curious to hear what you see as your superpower.
Yeah, so I would say 2 things, actually, and I think they're evenly rated as my superpower. Number one is I absolutely know what motivates me to do my work. And that just having that clarity makes life a lot easier, and it makes my job a lot easier. And that is being able to have a positive impact on society in some way. Sorry. And number two is an ability to stay calm under pressure. And those two combined, I think, are what gives me the power that I have. I guess that's the way I would put it.
Yeah. Wow. And thinking about how you're able to apply that now and it, at the Red Cross where unfortunately my sense is, disasters don't time themselves so that one could happen like in a sequential with a nice little summer break so you can take a breather, but no, never happens that way, right?
No, and unfortunately, I will say that the climate crisis that we all face now, we really don't have a non-disaster season. We truly don't. So you are on all the time, and that ability to stay calm it's critical just to keep your head about you. Yeah, for everybody, not just me, but for everybody who works there. And I think that does it attracts a certain type of person.
Yeah.
And I will tell you a funny anecdote. So you'll remember a colleague that we had, Dan Snyder, who worked with us for years and years at Porter Novelli. And I didn't actually realize I had the calm under pressure trait. And we were in the middle of a giant government proposal at a time when you still had to put them in hard copy books and send them off 24 hours before or hand deliver them or what have you. And I'd never done one before. And we talk about being thrown into the deep end without any training. And that happened in this case. I was early on in my career. And there I was. And I remember it so vividly. And we were all trying to get these books together. And we get it out the door, and he pulls me in the next day. And I said, how was that? Was that a terrible job? And he said to me, you stayed calm under pressure, and you will survive because you have that skill. And I honestly never knew that. But as he told me that, I started to focus on that for the next 15 or so years that I was in that proposal world. And it was a very helpful insight for me to know about myself because I may not have discovered it otherwise.
Okay. I got to pause and double down on that because that is incredibly powerful. And just speaks to something I believe so strongly is we need other people to help us spot our strengths. I think that because our superpowers are part of our intuitive nature, that that's just how you operate. So without somebody sometimes kind of shining a spotlight on that or saying that's valuable, that's special, maybe hard for us to see. And there, on the other side too, there are times when it can be frustrating when you look all around and say, I don't understand why others aren't responding in this way, because you just kind of assume that everyone's built that way.
Right.
So I just, what's so important to me about us being able to have conversations like this and being able to just talk openly about this is what I've discovered about myself, what others have helped me discover, is I think it empowers people, like even earlier in their careers, right, to tap into that. Because, you saying that, like having somebody point that out to you and then being able to be mindful of that and really grow in that area and apply that has just strengthened that over your time. And then it allows you to really direct it and it not only helps you, but it helps the people that you're working with and that you're leading too.
Yeah.
So
I think as you build teams on projects, initiatives, whatever it is, as you look at how do I bring in different strengths and different personalities, how do I make sure I'm being inclusive with not only mindset, but also experience and work style, just makes life a lot easier and makes us all more successful.
So true. I have to do a quick plug for Clifton Strengths right here.
Yes, yes.
Because it's one of those tools that can help you if you're struggling to sort of figure out, well, I don't know how to express what my strength is or what my superpower is. I've just find that tool to be a wonderful tool for me, it helped give language to what I kind of knew I did, but I didn't think it was special, or I didn't like connect. Oh, the fact that, I don't know, I see this, this, and this actually adds up to being strategic. Oh, okay.
Right. Right. And I think I had learned about that. Harmony was one.
Yes.
And that goes back to being the youngest of 7 kids and always wanting everybody to get along or be quiet so that I could talk.
Yes, you have to have a certain amount of advocacy, right? With yourself. Yep. I love that. Yeah, a quick thing on harmony. I think, that what's interesting to me about that is I think people kind of first think about, like conflict avoidance. And there is a conflict avoidance, but it's because you see that, like, what's the purpose of all of this conflict and noise?
Right.
We can accomplish so much more when we can maybe stop all the chatter and start listening to one another, and working together. And that is incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
So I think about that with what you've shared too about your superpowers and about your career, where you're bringing in all these different perspectives, different backgrounds, right? Different kinds of organizations, motives, agendas, all of that, and be able to find, here's how we can sing in harmony to make beautiful music.
Right. And I will say, I think we benefited from that at Porter Valley, where you were encouraged. I think encouraged is a good word. You were encouraged to build teams of different regions, different skill sets. And I think you were successful at that company the more you were able to do that, which ties into the ability to have relationships with all sorts of different colleagues.
So true. So true. If you went in, your mindset is kind of, I can do it alone, and my way to be successful is to kind of, build an empire, and, it wasn't going to work there.
No, you're going to fail quickly.
Flame out. Or I like to think of it like strong organizational cultures. And this can be good and bad, but because you do want diversity of style and thinking. But like if the values don't align, what I saw time and time again is, the like organism would reject the foreign object,
Right.
And it was a values alignment, I think, not because we embraced people with really different ways of thinking and backgrounds and approaches. But if you had like more of a self-centered, ego-driven kind of value, it didn't seem to work as well. Anyway, those are stories and reminiscences for off camera.
Right. Delete.
All right, I've taken up a lot of your time. Before we go, I do want to hear about your power song. Do you have a song that like encapsulates sort of who you are and your power, or that kind of just motivates and powers you up?
Yes. I've got, again, 2. I'm going to cheat and tell you I have 2.
Good.
And in fact, I listen to these songs all the time. One of them is this fight song, right? This is my fight song. And the other one is, I hope I have that title right. And then the other one is Shut Up and Dance With Me. And the reason for that is, again, given the work that we do, you just sort of have to break away sometimes and do something that's going to bring a smile to your face and give you a little bit of a boost of energy, positive energy. And the fight song piece takes me back to, I'm going to show my politics here for a minute, but it was at the time, it was tied to Hillary Clinton's campaign. And I just remember being so invigorated by it and loved the power behind it. And it's positive and it makes me laugh. And the Shut Up and Dance With Me piece, how can you not love that song? It just makes me happy. So I would say those are my power songs.
I love it. And you know what? They go so perfectly with the two strengths that are two superpowers you talked about. Fight song to me is all about knowing what you're like. It's that motivation. It's that core of like, this is what drives me. You know, it's like your anthem. Yeah. And that like Shut Up and Dance is like, forget all of this. Like, don't lose your head over everything. Yeah. Let's just get to like, let's get to like the humanity and, you know, what it's all about. So
right. And I mean, you just can't hear that song in my mind and not smile and be happy. So just like, you know, if I sit there and think about what am I going to watch that will make me happy, it's always going to be West Wing. Always it's going to be West Wing.
Back to your political science.
My political science, and there was always a nice undertone to positive change in the world and lots of humor. And so,
yeah, we have to hold on to it, don't we, Rosy? Because
there's too many. We do.
If I think about, and even just what I want to do in these, you know, conversations is inspire and inject a continual flow of positivity into the world, right? Because there's too much that's fighting against that, but there's no reason why we can't keep our eye on the things that are positive, that are moving, you know, in a productive and helpful direction, and then laugh. even in the midst of the hardest times, a good laugh can change. Can change things. So.
Yeah. Well, and I will just say, Melissa, that point you just made about, you just combined all the key words, right? It's about being positive, but also being, you said the word productive, right? So I think there is a big difference between what could be, you know, just sort of Pollyanna-ish, where we all just want to be happy, and you know that's not realistic, and we live in a divisive world. But if you can be thinking about how do I bring a positive look at things through a positive lens or a productive lens, then I can apply my strategy to it. I can apply the right strategy to it and be thinking about it from for us, or at least for me, a marketing and communications perspective. You have to combine all of those, right? Versus just everybody wanting the world to be great, because unfortunately it's just not.
Yeah, you know what? And what, because that's where you need the savviness of all the marketing and the private sector too.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So that you can take that like hope and optimism, but bring in the savviness so that you can, you know, I mean, I think about our work in tobacco control, and I mean, look, talk about incredible marketing,
right?
And a lot of money, you know. So you're not going to fight that with just old tactics or just wishful thinking. You know, you got to get smart and use those same kinds of things.
Yeah, as they say, hope is not a strategy, right?
True. Although I always said that hope was my children's college strategy, because in Georgia we had the Hope Scholarship. And so quite literally, I needed them to do well in school so they would qualify for that. That was one time it paid off. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much, Rosy, for your time. Thank you for all the great work that you do. Thank you for just all the years of pouring into me and teaching me and helping me see my strengths too. And I'm really grateful for our friendship.
Well, ditto. Thank you very much for the opportunity to chat, but more importantly, that we got to catch up. I love it.
Awesome. All right. Talk to you soon.
All right. Okay. Thank you. See ya.
Bye.
Power. Good. 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 Power. Good.